Yo, check out this clip from the pre-patch podcast.
Moving on to the news section, which we talked about a little bit here and there, but if you're unfamiliar with this, Microsoft is trying to buy Activision. I know it's probably a shocker to a lot of people. It's small acquisition, not too much on the line. It's only $69 billion. But there has been quite a bit of news that has happened where every single time that I think that okay, cool, we're not going to have any kind of issues or anything like that. Nope. Sony delivers something of wildness. And the newest thing is that Sony is, well, I think this came out first, right? Is that Sony, no, it's not about the exclusivity of Starfield. They're saying that they are concerned that Microsoft is going to degrade the shit out of Call of Duty, right? And now they're saying that they can't protect against the loss of Call of Duty at all. And then on top of that, this happened, which is Microsoft signs another cloud gaming deal to convince regulators. Like, this is just not looking good for Sony. Like, I don't know.
They're just digging themselves deeper and deeper too with everything that they say and put out.
Like, I don't know where this becomes a thing where Sony just says enough's enough.
I think they're getting to that point. I think Sony's realizing this late into the game, mind you, but I think they are realizing that the fight's lost. They need to start wrapping up and start doing damage control.
Like, I mean, because
far too late into the game, but
I don't think so. I don't think they're realizing it at all. I think they're going to continue kicking their feet and throwing tantrums until the very end.
The very bitter end, yeah. I kind of think so too.
Well, this article right here by Game Rant, real quick side note, do you know for the longest time I thought this was Gamer Ant?
Really?
You dingus.
This was before they changed, like they didn't change. This was like when they had first come out and they didn't have like the separation.
Logo.
Yeah, their logo was just this, and I was like, "Oh no, yeah." I listen. I go to like Gamer Ant, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is Gamer Ant?"
And Sid's over there like, "Yeah, man, like Ant-Man, bro. like Gamer, it's Gamer Ant."
I was like, "No, they're like a small site, right? They're for the little man, the little guy."
A small subsect of the furry community, right? The Gamer Ant.
Yeah, man, Gamer Ant.
You know, you like one goddamn game that's got furries in it, and then you're fucked forever. The game's not even about furries. Jesus Christ. Neon White's a good game. Fuck you guys. I don't care what you say. Anyway, this is all that's going to happen, right? Is that Microsoft is just going to continue to add like cloud gaming services. Like Sony, by stamping their feet and holding their breath, is literally making Microsoft look better. At this point, I think Microsoft's like, fuck it, whatever, man. Just keep going, I guess. Like, you're just making us look better and better every single time.
Yeah.
And the longer that this stuff is out there, like these things are going to continue to happen where, like, again, this is from Eurogamer, is, you know, PlayStation can't protect against the loss of Call of Duty. Like it's saying that, you know, they're continuing to try to put out there that it's going to cost them the game because Microsoft is just going to pull it eventually. I don't know. I mean, I feel like every single week we're just kind of like, there's no more, right? There can't be any more that's going to happen. And they just,
I feel like every single week we essentially cover the same bullshit too. It's like Sony continuously brings up the exact same shit. Because last week we were talking about the fact that Sony was like, well, we can't win against you because if you take away Call of Duty, we can't make games as good as Call of Duty. And I'm like, what? Like,
guys, I'm worried we're getting too self-reliant on all the news and just on.
Yeah, it's gonna be pre-patch.
Are we going down with them?
Yeah, instead of pre-patch podcast, it's becoming pre-Sony fails podcast.
What happens to us though?
It's like this is the comment right here which I want to highlight on, right? Like this right here, I think is and I think we talked about this last week, but how, like, as a developer, like a first-party developer, like that's underneath the Sony umbrella, at a certain point, when do you start to look at Sony and go, "Hey, Dad, can you just be proud of me?" Like, you know, but them saying this, like going into more detail today, Sony stated on its own development costs were small in comparison to Call of Duty. Even God of War Ragnarok, which Sony describes as its biggest ever first party title, could not compare. Like, you at a certain point are making your. I have to believe your first party developers kind of feel like, what the fuck, man? Like, you know, I don't know. It's just nuts.
It's almost like a devaluing of their biggest like their biggest sale for their consoles, right? Because like Sony has always been, that's where you go to get first party titles, right? But with these recent statements, it's almost like Sony is not. I wouldn't say they're not willing to, but they're. It's almost like they feel that they can't stay in the game with their first party titles, which is what they're best at in comparison to Microsoft.
100%. They just need to. Well, they're using Call of Duty as a money factory for those first party titles.
Which I don't think that that should be the case. Like honestly, if you're going to stand on a if you're going to stand up to Sony or to Xbox, to Microsoft, if you're going to try and do that, you need to take a stance of, we're confident in our ability to corner the market in what we're best at, right? And instead of relying on one franchise to essentially prop your entire company, in some cases, like your entire fucking, at least your entire console up, you need to be able to be willing to state, so if we lose Call of Duty, we can still prop ourselves up because we are your mainstay for first party content.
Yeah, but that doesn't make regulators want to cancel the deal,
Of course, of course not. Which is entire, as we covered last week. Sony's not doing this because they want Call of Duty. They're doing this because they don't want.
Yeah,
they don't want Microsoft to have
directly
it.
what he
That was
said.
direct, according to
Activision CEO.
Exec, an Activision's exec. That was what their main CEO said. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I almost think that they just need to turtle up and just shut the fuck up. Like honestly, like, and you guys can say that I'm against Sony all you want to, but like you can't sit here and look at all these things that we've covered over the past few weeks and be like, yeah, Sony's doing a good job with this. They're doing God's work. You know, like it's definitely not a self-serving. I mean, it is a self-serving thing, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So no, I get what you're saying. And I think a lot of it is fluff. I genuinely think that they are painting themselves worse off than they actually are going to be to try to get this deal shut down. I don't think Sony is going to go anywhere, even if Xbox does not allow Call of Duty to go onto. I don't think that their first party titles are reliant on third party funding.
I'll reiterate again. Microsoft has come out and said multiple times they have no intention of pulling it from Sony. They came out the other day and in fact and said straight up it would make no financial, like no sense financially for us to pull it off of the Xbox or the Sony platform.
It came out that Sony was being investigated with their exclusive titles, correct? By was it the FTC that's investigating?
It was the
UK rights regulations.
We'll see all of this come to light here soon. Like
I don't think that we'll ever see it. They'll investigate it, but we'll never see it.
But I mean, it's going to escalate to where like this has got to. I mean, this has got to go one way or the other. Like, and in the end, it's probably going to end with Sony obviously not getting their way.
So I want to put this out here, right? When we're talking about copies. So I was trying to look up how many copies of Modern Warfare 2 were sold on PlayStation 5 to give an accurate number, right? The closest number I could find quickly was on World War 2. So this was two games back. Oh no, I'm sorry. This was in 2017. So it's kind of a couple years ago, but I can only imagine that this was extrapolated year over year over year as each game has become the best selling Call of Duty of all time. But if we just take a snapshot, right, of Call of Duty World War II, 13.4 million units were sold on PlayStation 4, right? 4.67 million of them were purchased in North America. So if we take, and I'm gonna use Ragnarok, right? Which again, I could go back and pull, okay, say like the original game, God of War, but Ragnarok sold 13 million copies. So like their argument that Call of Duty,
$70, yeah.
right? That Call of Duty is the outperformer, and then without Call of Duty, like this stuff isn't viable.
Well,
Like,
you have to factor in also that Sony also was fully fronting the budget of Ragnarok, so the net gain from that is not going to be equal because they did have the development cost, whereas with Call of Duty they just have to pay the licensing fee,
right? But that's
whatever that would be. It would be. I would assume the licensing fee.
I would assume the
would be
licensing fee
less
would be
than
close
development.
to the development fee. Honestly,
You think so?
for Call of Duty, I would think. Maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe not like insanely
don't
close.
know,
Maybe like a quarter. But I'm sure that would be a pretty decent, hefty chunk of
Plus
change
whatever
they would have to
royalties
pull forward.
Activision is taking from each sale.
Plus, on top of that, we already know that Sony pays for exclusives. So you're not only are you paying for the licensing fee, you're paying for exclusives for Call of Duty as well. So,
Right.
and I'm sure that those aren't cheap either.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know. It is a yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I think, and now like with Sony pulling this kind of stuff where they're saying, hey, they're not happy about the Starfield Xbox exclusivity. Why now, Sony? Like, why are you bringing not? I mean, I know why, but like
I was about to say they're doing it because they're trying to force the hand of the FTC and the EU rights regulations. They're basically playing the victim, going, oh, they're pulling exclusive. See, this game right here is exclusive, so they're just gonna make Call of Duty exclusive. I guarantee it. They're
I
trying
mean,
to
this
play
is
the
the
victim.
first instance of a third-party studio going to one of these purchases and then going exclusive.
Yeah, I mean
that is factual.
I'll bring it up. We talked about it at one point. I think when we first started talking about Starfield, when they released that first gameplay. One thing that people have to remember: if you were surprised that Bethesda was going to go exclusive with most of their games after the Microsoft purchase, I feel bad for you because Microsoft and Bethesda have been in bed for a very long time before they went global, essentially, before Bethesda went to multiple different
It's still an anti-consumer
And-
practice.
no,
so,
wait,
100%.
take
I'm
Sony
not
out of
saying
the-
it's not. I'm not saying it's not. But if you thought that was not going to happen, you crazy.
Also, this is not the first case of that. So I know but Ghostwire Tokyo was a Sony exclusive when we're talking about from a like console to console. Like Ghostwire Tokyo could not be played on Xbox.
What are you talking about? I'm confused.
You're saying that this was the first instance of a third party studio going exclusive, and
I think
Well, no,
I think he's
third-party
talking about a
studio
third
being
party
bought
studio.
up,
Yeah, I
and
think he's
then-
talking about a third party studio that traditionally was was providing for all consoles and then got purchased
and then
went exclusive. I think that's what he's talking about.
right. But even still, like that's what I'm saying, though,
Ghostwire Tokyo development was not originally like that. I think that's their first game, is it not?
Who? That's Bethesda.
Ghostwire Tokyo was not Bethesda, was it? It was published by Bethesda, but the development was not Bethesda.
I thought it was Bethesda.
And then they got dragged out of Bethesda. No, let me check just to make sure.
Developer is Tango.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tango GameWorks.
All right. Well, then I redact that statement.
They were under Bethesda and then got basically taken out from Bethesda and went on their own at one point. So.
Also, is it? I thought they said that Starfield was going to be exclusive to Xbox, but only for a certain amount of time. That it was not going to be a sole Xbox only thing. I
don't think they ever went into detail about it. They just said that it was going to be exclusive, and they weren't sure what it was going to be exclusive, if it was going to be timed or not.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. This is just not we said it before. This is just not a good look. They need to quit. Like they need to stop. And also to like.
I think them bringing this up is actually the strongest case that they've made like this entire time, is the Bethesda Starfield case.
I also think that it's a very petty thing for them to bring up, considering what they've personally done with exclusivity. You can bring up the fact that it's a company that got purchased out and everything like that, and that's all fine and dandy. But considering the fact that for decades Sony's had console exclusives, exclusive maps, exclusive content inside of games.
The exclusive content's 100%
they
bullshit.
really don't have a foot to stand on at this point, in my
Right.
opinion.
This, like I said before, that this is the first instance
No,
of
and I understand that.
yeah.
Like,
Even with all the
what I
Sony
am,
purchases, they were only making Sony games anyway.
yeah. But what I am saying though is I don't think they have a foot to stand on when it comes to exclusivity, and I don't think you can argue that.
Well, also too,
I think you can argue that it's anti-consumer. I think that's the only argument they have in this case, is that Microsoft has done an anti-consumer practice by making a third-party company
They've done
that was
many
multi-console
anti-consumer
a single.
practices in the past, though. They've had many anti-consumer practices in the past, though, with all their exclusivity too.
Yeah, but they've never yanked a developer from a player base.
No,
But they've
how
yanked
far from it is
yanked
it?
maps, they've yanked fucking
They've yanked
raids.
content from player
Yeah.
bases. Yeah.
In my opinion, I believe that yanking content from player bases is a lot worse than yanking just an entire game.
I can
Because
almost
then
agree with
you're
that.
blocking off an
think
entire
it's-
subsection. You're alienating a player base, not just like the actual player base of the actual game, rather than just one entire section of
That's fair.
a what's it
Yeah.
called?
Yeah, that's fair.
the only other thing I'll throw in here about all this is like I'm interested to see then, because yes, this could be this could be the figurative slap to the face of Microsoft in an anti consumer kind of stance. But the moment that Sony then turns around and makes a Bungie game exclusive to only Sony, which I have more faith in that Sony will do that than what I have that Microsoft will continue to pull games. The moment that they do that, then at that point you lose all credibility, because you now have taken a third party studio that made games for everybody and said, we're locking them behind our platform, and you cannot, like Destiny 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever the fuck it's going to be, or whatever, we know Bungie's working on another live service game. Like if they lock that behind exclusivity of Sony, this all becomes, how a double-edged sword. Like how are you gonna chastise me in one face, but then at the same time do it again? And if you're gonna say like, well, I'm only doing it because you're doing it, that doesn't hold water, right? Like it
No, you
still
can't go the eye for an eye route.
Right.
But that's also, we're talking semantics of the future. That
Right,
doesn't.
of course. That's
Well,
what
I mean, so
yeah.
Sony is talking semantics of the future with COD. Like,
I mean, that's
they have
fair.
no actual proof that they're going to pull it. They're just doomsaying essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if this deal goes through, which it most likely will, Sony's gonna stand on the footing. Well, we can do this now and retaliatory,
100%.
basically.
Yeah. No, 100%.
They're gonna justify their purchasing or their exclusivity moving forward even more.
Well, the other side too.
Again, only people that lose are us, the consumer.
Yeah. The other side too that they're going to say is like, we're not going anti-consumer. You can get this on every other platform. Like you can get this on Nintendo. You can get this on a cloud service. You can get this on NVIDIA. You're right. You can't get it on your console. Sorry. I don't know. You
Watching Sony. Yeah. If just because you can't, like the only reason why you can't get it on Sony is because Sony.
Because Sony, they had their chance.
So,
Yeah, with the Call of Duty, 100%. With the Bethesda stuff, that still doesn't rub me the right way, but it was not expected.
Yeah,
it was not unexpected.
I expected it. I was about to say I 100% expected it. The one thing that's going to be shocking is if they pull Elder Scrolls 6. That's going to
They 100% are.
I don't know if they will, man. Like I think that's going to be a huge.
That would be a huge show of good faith if they didn't. Like that would be legitimately the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
If they were to come out and do that.
Here's the other side of it.
Would think they wouldn't be just because of sales numbers. I mean,
Well, we're also talking about Microsoft pulling it. We have not once mentioned the fact that for these games to end up on those platforms, the platforms themselves have to agree and say, yeah, we're cool. We want to buy rights to have this on our game. Like it's not that on our system. It is a two-way street, right? So there is a side of the world that says, like, will Sony go and say "fuck you" to Microsoft and go, "No,
I mean,
fuck
if they
you.
do, that'll be public knowledge, and then Sony can have the angry mobs outside of their HQ, right beside Square Enix.
I was about to say right beside Square Enix, 15 minutes away from Square Enix. By the way,
I mean, it is a world that is a possibility, right? Where
Yeah,
they
if Sony wants to go pure villain, then that would at least all be made public. It's not like they can paint Xbox as the villains in that arc when they themselves are not willing to play ball.
It's gonna be interesting to see. I think we've talked enough about it though. Like honestly, I'm to the point where like next week I think it's time to get rid of the Sony.
No, I love this. I love this section.
We've
so
literally
near to
covered
my
this
heart.
like every podcast.
You know when Enigma is getting tired of shitting on Sony, that we beat it into the ground a bit too much.
We're just hitting a dead horse at this point, man. It's just like don't. It's already dead, bro. Just leave it alone.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Patch Notes. Don't forget, you can catch our cast live every Thursday night at 10:30 Eastern Standard, right here on YouTube and Twitch.tv. You can also find us at anchor.fm/Free Patch Podcast, as well as the many other podcast platforms. Better be there.